Hello, I am Reverend Jacqulyn here in Breckenridge, Colorado, on the beautiful Blue River. And I want to talk to you about healing power. And that's a wonderful thing, sitting on top of these beautiful healing waters. Jesus, our master teacher, came to unlock so many of the secrets and understandings that we naturally have about healing power. And he came to do these wonders and do many, many miracles and many healings. One of the things that we have forgotten to remember is that those healing energies and healing powers did not cease 2,000 years ago. He continues, and that power continues as we remember and as we retell those stories of Jesus' wonderful healings. If we look at those healing stories and reclaim them in the oral tradition and tell them over and over, something really magical, mystical, and wonderful begins to happen. We begin to bring that healing into our own awareness and into our own lives. That story becomes our very own. And then we really and truly begin to remember what we have forgotten to remember, that healing power is within each and every one of us. It is there for us to access in any way, at any time, just there waiting for us. It is the treasure of the kingdom. And I chose a story a long time ago, one of those healing stories. And I began to tell it over and over and over. And I realized that story was not a coincidence in my life, the reason that I chose it, but that it meant so much to all that happened in my life previous to my awareness of it, and then my present, and then it began to illuminate my future. And that story was the woman with the hemorrhage. So I began to tell that story, and I would tell it to myself over and over and over again. And then I would grab a friend and say, I've got this wonderful healing story I want to tell you about. Because every time I tell this healing story, it unlocks healing energy in me, and I feel myself being knit together in ways that are more than the sum of the parts. And it is an incredible happening. So listen to this story. And so I would tell the story to my friend. And then the next day I would find another friend and I'd tell the story again. And I would tell the story to all of my friends until finally, every time I would call them on the phone, a friend would say, okay, tell me the story again. Because it was so powerful for me. And so I tell the story. So listen to it and hear what you need to hear, and think about perhaps plumbing the depths of these stories and finding one that really connects with you. So there once was a woman, and she had a hemorrhage for many, many, many years. Her life force was just flowing out of her daily, and she became weaker and weaker as the years went by. She spent all of her money going to doctors and asking them to help her, getting potions and all kinds of things, but nothing worked. And as time went by, her life became more and more diminished. Because you see, not only was she becoming diminished in her body, but because of the kind of affliction that she had with the hemorrhage, the people in her society considered her unclean. And so anytime she would walk through the village, they would hiss at her and say, "Get away, woman, unclean, unclean." And so as the years went by, not only did her body become frail, but her spirit became frail, because there was no one to talk to, no one to come close and hold her or give her a hug. And so she was alone in so many levels of that meaning of aloneness. One day, however, she heard about a man coming to her village by the name of Jesus, who had done miracles and amazing healings. And immediately inside of her, her spirit quickened, and she knew that if she could just touch that man, that she would be healed. And so she determined that as he came down the road, she would do whatever it took to garner her strength, to move her frail body through the crowds that surrounded this man and his entourage, and get to him and get that healing that she wanted. And so the day dawned, and she got up, and she staggered out of her house, and the people were everywhere, and there was a buzz about this man who was coming. And for once, her affliction served her in good stead, because nobody wanted to be around her. And so as she moved through the crowds would part. And people, yes, they would hiss at her and say, "Get away, woman, unclean," but they also made a path for her. And it almost became like the parting of the sea. And she moves towards Jesus and his disciples coming down the road. But she can't move quite quickly enough. And just as she gets there, and she stumbles forward with her hand reached out to touch him, and she misses him. But his robe touches her fingertips like a whisper. And immediately, she was healed. And Jesus stopped in the road, and he looked around at his disciples, and he said, "Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "Master, look around you. There are all these people touching you." And he said, "No. Who touched me? I felt the power go out." And he turned around, and he saw the woman kneeling in the dust. And she looked up into those fathomless eyes, and she said, "Master, it is I who touched you." And he reached down into the dust, and he lifted her up. And for the first time in over a decade, she felt that incredible energy of human touch. But not only that, her heart quickened because she knew about this connection that she and Jesus had. And he looked at her and said, "You are healed by your own faith. You are healed, my daughter. Go in peace." The only time that Jesus ever called a woman his daughter, because this was the apostolic divine succession. He knew when he saw her that she had the same power in her that he had in him. And he gave witness to that. And she knew it too. She had the power to heal herself, and she remembered what she had forgotten to remember. I tell that story because every day I need to remember what I have forgotten to remember. That the healing power of that divine energy is ours, here, now, to access. It is our gift, our divine right. And I claim that healing today for myself, for you, for the world. And it is here, and it is now, and so it is. Thank you.